Try. Good morning, everyone. It's Workshops for Moms, our weekly series bringing you experts who have things to share with us that really help us in our parenting. And this morning, I am so happy to have our baby whisperer with us. So today we'll be taking a pause after today's show because we're going on summer schedule, because at Workshops for Moms, we've got kids coming home for summer and grandkids and vacations, and you know how all that goes. So we will still have our once a month Sunday evening panels, which will come at the end of the month in June, July, and August, and we've really been enjoying those. And we follow that up with a women's circle, and Michelle, part of our Workshops for Moms team, conducts those. And this is our part of being the 1 million circles of joining women around the planet. So it's always a really wonderful way to end the month. So we'll send out emails about that. You don't have to remember that today. And we're going to be bringing you some fun programming over the summer also. But since we've all got kids coming home for the summer or else grandbabies, we'll pause on the weekly shows. But we are so happy to have Irene with us today because not only is she a baby whisperer, but she really helps parents adjust to that first year of babies. And you know, those of you who've been through it know that is an incredible year in your life, and you don't want to miss a moment of it. But also, there may be some new babies coming this summer, and you'll want to get in touch with Irene because she has a program called Best Baby Beginnings. Now, Irene's specialty is really empowering new and expectant parents to feel confident and feel really connected to the benefits of that first year with their new babies. She's a pediatric occupational therapist with over 20 years of clinical expertise, including the Children's Hospital in Miami. She is certified as a pediatric occupational therapist, and she'll tell you what that means. And she is certified in neurodevelopment and sensory integration. So she has worked with some really challenging situations and had wonderful results of bringing those little babies that have needed a lot of extra care to their families. So we want you to have that experience. And, you know, as grandparents too, it makes me, when I hear Irene, it makes me want to have another little one almost at home again, just to try it. All right. So Irene, take it away.
Thank you for that introduction, Tracy. Yeah, actually, my babies have been my tiny teachers. I call them tiny teachers because I have learned quite a bit from them. And every time I think about how we want to give our babies the best beginnings to life, I recruit all that knowledge that I've amassed through the years and those experiences with my tiny teachers so that we can bring it home to parents everywhere, because we all want the best for our babies. And those moments, I call them miracle moments, not because I'm being, unrealistic, because they actually are the moments that will shape the rest of your lives. So we want to take as much benefit in blessing and building and getting benefit from those moments as we can. So that's what I devoted my career now, thanks to all my little tiny teachers that help me just bring this home for every child and every family. So I had promised you, you said you were asking about occupational therapy. I know that it's kind of like a handful. Occupational therapy is simply the science that helps people live, call it functional lives, but honestly, it's about doing the experiences that are meaningful to you in your life. With babies, of course, that has a lot to do with feeding, with how present we are in the world, how comfortable we feel in our skin, how we are interacting and learning from the world, and those activities that make our life meaningful. Those are activities of daily living. And that's what occupational therapy does. So that's it.
We hear the term, we just don't know what that
I
means. And as
know, and
applying
it's
it to
a lot.
babies.
And it's a lot of information. So sometimes what I try to do is just tell parents, why is that important? So I explain it in terms like, why is a neurodevelopmental certification even important? Well, because it makes someone like me be able to facilitate healthy movement. So if you have someone like me in your team and wow, it's not just about whether your baby is picking up their head or how comfortable they are with your embrace, but the whole natural sequence that you can actually facilitate healthy movement, because babies are actually shaping their bodies in that first year of life. We are that moldable. And that's why I call those moments miracle moments. And my call is for parents to build and benefit from those, because they don't come around as much as they do in that first year. And you kind of sense that when you hold your baby in your arms. You know that those first moments, those first experiences do shape our brains, and I think our whole bodies for the rest of our lives. So, and that's why I call them miracle moments too. And I had promised to show you some. So, shall we go on with that?
Yep. I just thought it would be helpful to all of us to understand your role and you can speak to us about this in a different way.
Yes, and actually I want to show you a little bit of why. Let me see if I can eventually. Okay, so this is part of why I talk about not missing those moments, but kind of building and benefiting from them. Usually the first step is actually to really be present with your baby. Am I sharing the screen? Did I get this right?
I
I'm
see
sorry,
the
this is a
screen.
little awkward.
I see the
Here.
screen. I'm gonna
So,
I'm just shutting off just for a second. I've got to go get cats out of my office here.
all right, and that's life. So this is my website, just so we understand about discovering our baby's miracle moments. I call them miracle moments because they are the ones that will shape the rest of your lives. And so that's why I wanted to explain. Sometimes when people hear me talk about miracle moments, they don't exactly know that I'm actually speaking about particular moments. So very specific moments. So are we ready to explore some of those? Albert Einstein said, there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other one is as if though everything is a miracle. In that first crucial year of life, and even before we get here, even before our babies land in the planet, those experiences really shape how we look at the world, how we perceive ourselves in the world, who we are in the world. And I believe one of the most magical things that we can do for our babies and for ourselves is just to be truly present so you can witness it. I think most of us have a sense of it and we feel how miraculous this time is, but often we are beating up on ourselves because we don't have all the answers. We're being barraged by all this information and can't really make sense of it at the time when it's most helpful. So that's why I love to partner with parents so that they can actually relax and be completely present in this experience. Because you know how life is. Those moments don't come back, and we want to make the most of them. So with that, let's look at miracle number one. Okay, so this baby is doing lots of wonderful things. We talk about how babies don't talk without words, but they do talk through a whole bunch of different avenues. So I would like to talk about what this baby is telling us, right? what is this baby saying? This baby is very calm, very comfortable in his or her skin. And you see this whole developmental sequence, like they will show you what they need. This baby is actually exploring hand to hand, it's called. And that in itself is a very crucial part of how we start discovering our bodies. And we do so through the skin. The skin is the organ that is most receptive to the experience of being in the world when we first come into it. That's why sometimes we have to modify our touch with very little ones, because they get stressed out if they're not contained like they were in their mommy's womb, or something is irritating to them, which a lot of things would be. But this baby right here is showing us how easily and wonderfully they're not only discovering their own bodies by bringing their own hands together, they're feeling it, they're knowing where their boundaries are. And she or he is also bringing their hands to the mouth. Now that's a sign of readiness. Readiness and preparation to feed. And why is that important? Because it doesn't always come automatically. And babies need to be ready to engage in the experience of feeding. Many of us have children that are kind of fussy when it comes to feeding, but there's a natural rhythm to it. And just building on that natural rhythm, you can make it so much easier for both you and your baby. For example, this one is showing us how easily they're putting their hands near their mouth. The mouth is rich with sensory input. And so when a baby brings their hands to their mouth, it's a great preparatory activity for feeding. And this baby is accepting it very well. He's very calm. And I'm suspecting in a few moments he's going to rouse and he's going to be ready, or she's going to be ready for feeding. And these are all the wonderful things that are happening in front of our eyes every day that we want to pay attention to. We want to pay attention to this because development builds on this little moment. So now this baby's going to know exactly where their hands are, where their fingers are, without really having to think about it, right? For us adults, it should be automatic. Mind you, it's not always. But it builds our coordination, our body scheme, how functional we are in the world. Any question? Is this bringing up anything for you?
I mean, especially when you're a first-time parent, you miss most of everything. I kind of think, you get crying.
You know what? Originally, I had an interview very recently with someone who said, I was so ill prepared to be a parent when it happened to me. And I'm like, you might think that with your brain, but our nervous system is not limited to what happens just in our brain. It is in our whole bodies, and we take those memories with us, particularly as a baby. So he was telling me, I was just doing skin to skin with my baby, but I didn't really know what I was doing, and I wasn't really fully present. I didn't know how incredibly valuable that was. It was like, you don't have to. You had this experience with your baby. And like Cuban people say, nadie te quita lo bailado. Nobody will take away what you have lived. I love that saying because you've lived your life, right? And you just gotta come to terms with it and embrace it, because whether you understood it at the time or not, that was a significant moment to build on with your baby. And you have that. Now you can maximize it, of course, if you have someone like me and your team, and that's showing you, guiding you and supporting you through this miraculous unfoldment that is a human. Yeah. And with that, I'm going to show you the next miracle moment. And so this is another signal that babies may or may not give us. But this up here is called fingers playing. And what happens is sometimes when sensory input, meaning the experience from our world, is something that we're not prepared for, or it's irritating, babies will go like this. You know, it's like, stop, I'm not able to handle this. So what I'm guessing at is either a texture or a sound or something that has elicited that startle response. So you can get your baby signals and accommodate or get to know them better just by what they're signaling to you. In the other picture, then we have what it's an adaptive grasp, right? And this is so important. Just because it happens every day, it doesn't mean that it's not crucial. Sometimes this was the only avenue my parents had to connect with their babies in the neonatal intensive care unit and the cardiac intensive care unit. Sometimes it wasn't possible to have them in your arms and hold them and move them the way you would want to. But this was enough to help the baby feel secure. And that grasping not only helped them get a hold of themselves, literally, but also get ready for feeding. The sucking and the grasping come in together. And right now I have a little baby in the NI, and those two reflexes are working beautifully so that he can feed by mouth. One that came early. So this is how we build a human. And it is every bit miraculous. And it is not just about the baby. It is, I call it a sacred interaction between a parent and a child. Because as you come into the world, I don't know how long it takes us to know that we can't do this by ourselves. We can't do it well. We're not meant to. We are born from the joining of two humans, so that should tell us something. But when the baby emerges from the womb, they need that, and they're almost like part of their mommies. So the nervous system, we could almost say that it's a partnership. You know, whatever's good for the baby is good for mommy. Whatever's good for the mommy is good for baby. And look at this beautiful, miraculous moment of interaction right here. You can tell the mommy is joyous and happy and confident. And what do you think she's transmitting to her baby? Because babies read us better than anyone. Babies sense it when you're like stressed out, where you're not fully present. And they can't help but respond to us. So part of my function and my mission is to help the parent and the baby tune their nervous systems so that they can co-create the best beginnings to life. That's what we do at Best Baby Beginnings. And you see this mom here, she's so easily holding her baby in the position that against gravity, but the baby doesn't have enough motor control, so she knows exactly where to support that baby. And she and her baby are engaging in some of the most important early learning activities, which is that eye contact, right? But I bet you she's moving, right? And that just catapults this experience into another realm. Depending on the type of movements we do with our babies, it can either focus our attention, it can arouse us. It's a very powerful avenue that we communicate with our babies, you know? So she is obviously super comfortable, super happy, and the baby looks relaxed and attentive to her. That's all working wonderfully, and it's happening naturally. So these are the moments that we build on. Because here's we're establishing attention and early learning, coordination. Everything is happening right in front of our eyes. So we want to know how to build on that for the benefit of both mommy and baby. And this is pretty much the whole reason why I created Best Baby Beginnings, you know? To have the peace of mind to know that you're giving your infant the best beginnings to life, and for it to be easy and joyful for both of you. Why? Because that is wellness. That is health. That's what we are all. Ooh, I'm going to stop sharing right now. That's what we all deserve.
Can I ask about little ones that you've seen in your unit, especially that are coming in stressed, or the little ones that end up, they're coming with drugs in their system? And I'm just looking at that little picture of the baby with its hand. Just it's so stressful to me.
Oh,
Because I'm thinking those little children, that is the only thing that they're experiencing. Or if they are
okay.
going into not this kind of supportive existence and they need more, I mean, you've seen all kinds of things in your practice.
I have to tell you, and that's why I call them tiny teachers. And I'm going to put your mind at ease. It is that significant, but I will tell you how I really honor the babies, because those nervous systems are so adaptive. I mean, we human beings, that's why I say that humans are miraculous, because our systems are incredibly adaptive. Now, I've had a view of it, an experience of it, because when they first come in, what I mean by adaptive is that they're so forgiving. Their systems are so forgiving that even through all these noxious experiences, if you take the time to form a bond with them and respond to them, it's miraculous, truly miraculous what you can accomplish in that time. That's why I call them miracle moments. These are the ones you want to build on for the rest of your life. They're very forgiving. They're very adapting, So just because they did it once, or, they will do things that don't look, we all get disorganized when we're learning something new. So imagine coming into the world. You're going to get a little disorganized. But if you're received with love and honor, and babies, I have to tell you, one day we're going to measure it. I think that there's some research out there already. We're going to measure the power of love, because I have seen it at play, and how that connection just helps you thrive, especially when you're a tiny little peanut.
So somebody I was talking with recently was saying that their husband volunteers at the hospital just to hold babies.
Yes, I had my mom do that. I think it's very healing, not just for the person doing, not just for the baby, but for the adult. And there's some research as to the quality of the bonding. And for example, parents, fathers in particular, there's some research stating that the earlier they hold their babies, the stronger the bond that is formed. That's why sometimes I would have to chase them, like, especially the grandparents, they were so afraid to hold their babies when they were in the incubator. They didn't know how to touch them or anything. And I would just show them gently how to do it. But that is just an invaluable experience. That embrace is sacred.
Just a little clip of that on the internet. This important thing to dads. We can't devalue, both, but I think that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
it's real.
Yeah. I mean, this is touching, but I'm also thinking of all the little ones struggling, and
I understand.
And your heart. I mean, you must always wear your heart outside your body when you're working with babies. So as far as, so when, with your program of Best Baby Beginnings,
Yes.
how does a parent work with you? Because this is online. So
you can go to bestbabybeginnings.com, sign up for our talk, sign up for our waiting list. I have activities going on every month. And in fact, the people that come into my program, we have at least 3 touch points a month, because those first few months are critical. But I try to get people in before the baby arrives so that we can be prepared. So yes, just go to bestbabybeginnings.com, and I will include, for the people that have seen this talk, my gift is a free consultation. If you know a growing family, or someone that just had a baby, I'm going to plug in my calendar link so you can get a free consultation.
Great.
We can see where you are and what you need next.
And for people listening to the replay, you wouldn't see that in the chat, but I'll put it below the replay. So it will be there, so you can have direct contact with Irene. Because I know you can listen to this over and over, and she's so calming, isn't she? Oh wait, my talk.
I've been trained for the best tiny teachers, Tracy. You're so sweet.
Oh yeah, so all of that information will be there for you, and even if you're a grandparent or an aunt,
absolutely.
But I'm thinking for foster parents. I mean, I knew somebody who fostered babies that were coming, with drug addicted, and I think this would be so helpful. I'm sure you get some basic training, but I think
this is a little different. This is about tuning your entire nervous system to be the best that it can be with this new life coming in, and how to read the signals and all that. And we need a nest of support of allo parents. I think that's the term that they use for the community that is nesting a new life, because it's not just the parents. I mean, that's like a superhuman effort. You need a village. Everybody says it.
Which is workshops for moms.
Yeah, exactly.
People Thank like God
Irene. So I would like to take time now to transition and introduce you, my dear.
All right. Well, I need to hunt for my slides too.
Okay. So
I will,
is it okay if I start bragging about you?
Okay, let me find my screen share and then we'll see.
And let me find the wonderful introduction that I have for you. I'm so glad this touched you.
Oh my gosh. Oh, bringing tears to my eyes. And then we're going to transition to let's not mess this up.
So I'm going to start bragging about Tracy because she's next. Now, Tracy Cheney has taught thousands of kids over decades, PK through 8th grade, 5 generations, starting with Gen Y. California Elementary Art Teacher of the Year in 2013. Bravo. Her program was honored as a California Exemplary Program in 2015. Wow. The gifts you give to the world. She was selected to serve on the State Education Committee to write the new art standards for the public schools adopted by the California legislature in 2019. She produced an award-winning public radio show for 5 years called Making the Grade. She designed a pilot program, the Arts and Science Middle School, and created the first program for latchkey kids, after-school art studio for 7 years. Well, that's amazing. And I have to tell you, as an OT, when you're talking about arts, you are actually building the brain there. So no accident that you're calling the, I saw you say something in here that was very apropos. It's skill building. It's everything.
Yeah.
So thank you for your contribution.
Well, thank you. And I was excited to be a guest with you because I knew you'd be talking about getting babies started, and I kind of want to continue with that. First, let me see if my screen share. It says I'm screen sharing, but can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, because I can't. So there. So I was very excited to work with Irene on this particular show because I wanted to talk about something with parents to give you permission to, we're going to talk about your child's creative thinking, and we may not think, we kind of think that is fluff, but are we developing our child's innate creative thinking and how that relates to school? So I have taught thousands of kindergartners, and the reason I wanted to share this with you parents, especially because you're now the generation that has had handheld electronics. So millennials, you know, it was an uneven rollout for you guys, depending where you lived in the country and, you know, all the economics. But now at kindergarten, we are at 1-to-1 with devices. Plus, as we see here in this picture, now I'm noticing with Gen Alpha, I think that's what the new generation is going to be called. You know, everybody gets their little nickname. They are being given handheld devices in the stroller now. And I have become increasingly alarmed about this. And that's why I really, you've got this great calm beginning with Irene. I'm going to tell you as a teacher, don't want to sound alarmist, but my presentation is going to be packed with a lot of information, which because this will be on a replay, because our podcast has visual with it, you'll be able to read the slides and go back, because I'll go through them pretty fast, but they're packed because I'm a teacher. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here is to give you permission that even though this has become such a huge part of our culture, with our little ones now spending almost 8 hours a day, sometimes with screens in various ways, I want to talk to you about creative thinking. So what you get started with that baby, that infant, and where we need to be with our little ones and going on into our school age kids. And of course, we're hearing now the detriment of social media with our teens. So it was really interesting to me, you know, the iPad was only invented 13 years ago, but how it has transformed information and the way that kids want school delivered in little chunks and entertaining and things, and not doing the hard work of thinking. It seems hard when you've just been kind of entertained and it's rather passive. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I thought it was always very interesting that Steve Jobs did not let his kids have the devices. And when I worked up in San Jose, in Silicon Valley in an elementary school, there was one school that did not allow electronics at all. All the parents worked in the industry and wanted school to be school. And, you know, you're busy with your own teaching and all. And I never got over there. And I really wish I had, because I wanted to see and talk with those parents and those administrators. I also have an administrative credential, so I'm always interested in how we're delivering our school programs. So I want to thank you for, you know, taking an interest in this topic, because it is of vital importance to your child. So creativity, it seems elusive, which is kind of crazy, but that's because we haven't really defined it and we haven't put a lot of importance on it. But this is where your child is thinking right now at this age. So what is creativity? At this point, we're going to talk about it as connecting ideas. And I have up here Gutenberg. We know how the world changed with the invention of press. He didn't invent the press, though. He took a coin press and movable type and changed the world. So this is a way of looking at things and putting things together. So I like the chocolate and peanut butter idea. Whoever put those together was a genius, and it still is one of my favorite treats. And then I have a picture here of Apollo 13. And if you ever see that movie, you know, the space mission was in trouble and all these brilliant scientists, and I know some people who, you know, work at NASA, really, really smart people, and they had to come to terms with what was on board and how could we use that in a different way to save the mission. And they did. That to me is creativity at work. This is not a random thing, though. So one of the things is looking at everything else and putting it together. And your child is doing that when they are working with blocks and toys, and their thinking is moving. Looking at a 2D screen that has been curated by adults, that's not in the child's world. The child is not doing anything, even though it may look like, okay, we're making some marks. No, your child needs to actually be handling things. This is eye-hand coordination that develops the synapses, right? If they're not doing that, they're getting wired differently. And when Gen Z was first coming into schools, we had a lot of questions for the experts who said these kids are going to be wired differently. And we said, what do we do? And said, we don't know until they grow up. And now they are entering the workforce. And there's a lot of comments we could be making about the way that they are learning on the job. Now, I happen to love this quote, and that's what we need our kids to be, is curious. So I want to make a little differentiation between creativity and imagination, because we use them interchangeably. So creativity is looking at things, existing things, and putting them together in new ways and seeing combinations. And isn't that what Steve Jobs did? They took the BlackBerry and made it a far more fascinating and seductive experience, right? That everybody has to have it. So imagination is what does not exist yet. And like Disney had his Imagineers, and it was like, think of anything and we'll have the engineers, put it together. We will bring it to life through the artists in every way imaginable. So they got open, got to play with that and bring it for everybody else to enjoy. So we are in the creator economy now, and you see that in lots of ways. And so when talking about Gen Z, they don't need to, they feel like they don't have to always listen to instructions because they can look it up. They have a computer at the end of their fingertips that they are never unengaged with, right? So it's a different way that they are processing information. So what I want to bring to your attention is this test. And it's used to bash the public schools still. It happened in 1968. And it was a test that was actually developed for NASA. And they were, we had the space program going on. We were in this rush, and they needed to know if somebody was going to be a fit for their program. And so they devised this test that then somebody thought, well, what about giving this to kids who are in Head Start? So usually we think about children in those programs who do not have access to all the economic equality and school, and they started offering this program to 4-year-olds. And so these would be children who would be lacking in something. And when they gave that exact test that they were giving to the adults, to these little kids in Head Start, they found out that 98% of those kids were scoring at the genius level. This just was mind-blowing because people didn't think that about kids. So it says something there about creative thinking, because that's what they were measuring, and they wanted people to come to NASA who had that kind of thinking. So this was a really interesting test done over many years. So they gave the same kids that identical test 5 years later and found that the genius level had really dropped. And so what happened? 5 years after that, in 1978, when those kids were between ages 13 and 15, look how significant the drop was. And then it was administered to 200,000 adults, and at adult level, very few of us would measure at the genius level. Now, this was done before screens ever got involved in the act. All right. So we have said, oh, okay, school is causing the problem here. But there's a lot of other factors, and that's kind of when I want to bring this to you, because this comes up, and we do give creative thinking tests. Now, lots of them have been devised, trying to capture that, what it is about this type of thinking. But your kids have it naturally. However, when they are coming to school, we're starting to complain that school's hard, that it's hard to think. And I'm thinking that gamification has some parts of that society, and there's a whole lot of stuff, and teachers can't do much about all the outside stuff. But school, starting in the 2000s, I mean, I've been a part of every wave for a lot of years. So in this age of accountability, of high stakes testing and all of that stuff, and trying to measure this, we really switched to getting the one right answer, that was really important. That really affected millennials. So now we have millennials as parents. All of this has had an effect on this type of thinking. And that also affects our economy because we need them to be good thinkers. So I like this quote from Dr. Seuss. So we need to be thinking with both sides of our brain. And, we do, and there's more to it than just this two hemispheres, I realize. But I just am only using that because you've heard of some of the terms, and I'm just calling your attention to it. So when we talk about the right brain modality, this is where your kids are thinking, your small kids. They are not involved in critical thinking process. They have magical thinking. It is hard to differentiate between reality and, and all was kind of real there as they sort this stuff out. My point is, when a child has a baby has a screen in front of their face in their stroller, they are not looking out at the world and making sense of all this stuff. This is a long process. The left brain is very much about being able to copy, and it's going to be very precise skills. And I have to say that at school level, we do spend a lot of time to teach that. We've decided it's really important to know math and spelling and reading and being able to talk. All of that's a very left brain activity. And that's what kids are spending so much of their time in when they get to school. But we're kind of devaluing all of this that's so important. And I want to say, this is why you cannot text or be on your phone and drive. Driving is a right brain modality. It is all about perception and depth and patterns and observation. And when you are talking, you are narrowing your focus. So right brain is very wide open and the other is very focused. And school gets really good at what school is asked to do. We want all of this stuff to be happening. But, kids don't start really developing, even work on those critical thinking skills, but that's about at 4th grade. Up to this point, for lots of boys, I want to talk about, this is where they, most kids are visual learners, and yet that's not what's happening at school. And so as they get older, they get disconnected from how do you get ideas? And I'll have kids sitting there doing nothing. And I said, what are you doing? Well, I'm waiting for an idea. Here's where doodling comes into play. Doodling and scribbling and all that gives you instant access to your right brain modality. This is why we have to keep these things up. Now, we know what right brain thinking feels like. You've experienced it, even though you may feel like, oh, I'm not artistic. I hear that all the time from adults, but you've experienced this. It has a feeling to it. And this is where your child lives. Don't we just love that your child lives in the here and now, not thinking of something off in the future to be afraid of, hopefully being able to let go of past things, but learning from past things so that they get into that wonderful place where time does not exist, because that's a construct anyway. So I like this with Picasso, who was so highly gifted by age 18. His dad was an art teacher at the academy. He could draw perfect portraits. He could have made a great living. But instead, he went off, lived in poverty for years as he was trying to get back to this state that we're talking about of being at the young child, like at the 1st grade level. His art reflected trying to get back to that feeling, because it is a feeling, and being able to produce from that. And we see, his struggle for that for years. So as I said, your creative thinking is a doing. It's an active thing. So being on a passive screen and just kind of watching is not the same thing. And what you get from that is a child, just learning to walk. Child's not getting upset that they fall down. It's like, oh, okay, well, that didn't work. We can continue to work at it. And that's what we have to allow the creative process. You're just getting feedback. It's not critical. And your child has to be doing all of these things to be able to make those judgments and learn from it and develop their brain. So we want to realize that when your child is doing something, they're having active brain development. And it is so critical in the first 5 years. having worked with so many children and children in foster care and children who have really come through traumatic experiences, this is an active process that really needs to be going up until age 5. School will be a struggle. And I hate to say that, but I've seen it happen just so much without this. And the 4 brain activities here that we want is fluency, flexibility, transformation, putting things together, and you put your own unique twist on it. And so, I do not like grading children's artwork at all, but you get forced into being accountable, right? So back up here, one thing. So I would tell the kids, you do everything that's asked for this project, and we're not copying other artists. We're not doing that because those were adults who were struggling and working their way through, and the kids need to have that struggle too, to find that themselves. But to get an A, then where's your unique special twist? Didn't care if it was comic or what they did. That's something that they were taking it and making it their own. That's where we need that original thought. And doesn't it feel great when we work through a project? Totally. All right. So just talking about how this develops, I do have a talk really focusing on all the different aspects of doodling and drawing, and we go through very, very, I want to say prescribed, but recognizable stages as humans. That's why you can't short circuit it. So kids that have electronics in their hand need to spend that equal time, really more, with pencils and crayons in their hand to be able to develop their brains and move forward. So it's a very, they need to get to the point where through drawing, they realize, oh, I can make a symbol and it stands for things. That is a huge human development. And they need to go through that, and they can only go through that themselves through drawing and scribbling, because then they're ready to write, understand writing, and understand writing numbers, and that those are symbols. They get to that themselves through drawing. So when kids are in the elementary years, I feel in education, we've been forced to put the cart before the horse, and we're making kindergartners write sentences before they are ready. And then we're deciding that the kids are slow, or we have a lot of kids flunking kindergarten, because you have to draw first and you have to go through these stages, and then you read and then you write. And you can tell at the beginning of the year, I have the kids all do a project. It's called Draw Your Family. You can tell right from that where the kids are developmentally, if they've been working through the process, if they haven't even started. And yet we're asking all of them to do this really hard thing at age 5. And if they haven't been prepared for it, and that's why parents, I'm saying, crayons, yes, all of that stuff that you think might be old-fashioned, it's actually the educational component that your child needs. This is their homework before they come to school to be ready. And you can't skip it as much as you want. And I just can't stand seeing little kids struggle at the beginning of school, and it's not a happy experience, and school is a struggle all the way through, and it comes back to this. So think about yourself now, because you as a parent guiding this might not think it's important to do this, because you may have a negative feeling about your artistic ability. So if you can see that and what happened to you, wait, you can be drawing right along with your kids, because that is their world, and you enter their world through sitting beside them and doing this. And yes, I know it's really important to read to kids, of course, and we talk to them, but if you can sit, because this is where they are in their creative thinking, and you enter their experience that way. So, but at age 10, we do need some instruction, and we've cut it out of the schools, and people need this. It doesn't matter that you wish the kid do something else. No, this is where they are developmentally. That's why you need to teach it. And for the kids now, they've been through all these years of school with this left brain education, because, look how long it takes to teach it and practice it, and the repetition, and kids aren't wanting to do all of that work now. Spelling kind of goes out the window because, we can do spell check. Cursive has gone out the window because we don't test it. What's not tested is not getting taught. But that whole movement, that hand-eye coordination develops here, the synapses. So it's really important. And I have to say, right at this point of teaching middle school, it's agony for these kids that have not had any of this. Because when you hit middle school, now it becomes you're graded. And it is so hard. These are hard parent teacher conferences. They're hard with the kids because I know what they've lacked. All right, when we get to that age and you get stuck, and I think most Americans are stuck where they were in 6th grade. If you kind of evaluate that, girls, hearts, rainbows, flowers. The boys often push through because of the things they like to draw, like rockets and cars. And that is a natural push for them. And they should be going into the fields that we want girls to go into too. But, you know, they are dependent on drawing. And how many boys that are coming in with just awful clutching pencils and have no fluidity because, you know what, you can write on the computer. And so we're letting this go. And I wonder if they are being kept out of the field that they would really enjoy because they haven't developed that fluidity. And excuse me, I'm talking a lot. Let me get a drink here.
I'm going to
It's a favorite topic.
interject. Can I just say something? Everything you
Sure.
have talked about, can I just put a little like cherry on the top for you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So years back, when they took away recess from school and cut back on the arts, occupational therapies everywhere where like we were doing a lot of what is that called? Advocacy work, because it impacts neurodevelopment. Science tells you that your nervous system does not mature from being on the screen. It doesn't develop, just like you're saying, you want to develop your entire brain and flexibility within it, because those parts, right brain, left brain, they're kind of flexible in each person. For that to come together, children need to touch, like the same things they do in art and play until they're 9 years old. They're not supposed to be like verbal and visual learners until that time. They're really not that ready for school. They're ready to play in a much more self-initiated fashion.
I totally agree with you. And the day that, I'll just switch to a slide to read something else, but the day when a kindergartner, it was on Valentine's Day, a kindergarten teacher called me and said, oh my gosh, the principal just said, no more art, no more drawing in kindergarten. And this was a school that had a really long hallway. And I flew down that hallway and burst into her office. I said, no, you're doing the opposite of what these kids need. And this was a high risk school where, you know, children were not coming prepared at all. And we were taking away the very thing they needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made
but
me crazy.
How do we impact the people making these decisions with the actual scientific data and the knowledge of actual neurodevelopment and sensory processing?
Well,
how do
we've known this about drawing since the 1940s and the importance of it. We've known it. The brain work, you know, that was in the 70s and you know, it's taken a while to kind of come in. So there are people that know it, but they're not always the ones who are making the decisions about education. And if you were at a low-end school, which that was a at-risk school that I was there, the principal, everybody was great. And I was really happy to be there, as difficult as it was. But we take away from the kids who need it the most because we think it has to be reading, writing, and math.
But what I'm thinking is the people making these decisions need to be informed decisions. They cannot just do this in a vacuum because they wanted to test a certain thing. They have to have the developmental knowledge. Otherwise, they're making the wrong decisions.
Yes, and the decisions is, and we have a reading specialist who just popping. Hi, Willa, who's a reading specialist who is always on trying to fix all these things. Here's the problem, because you're asking kids to do what you cut off the developmental part of it, and you're asking them to do something that is way beyond their ability to do. And it's not the kid's fault, is because we haven't valued this part of education. we want them, we have to value this, the right side of the brain, if you want to call it that. That came from an artist, actually, Betty Edwards, who took that brain research in the 70s and applied it to art, but had big implications. So I'm saying the knowledge is there, but schools don't get to do what's always in the interest of kids, or developmentally how kids
That should be a no-no, though. That should not.
right. So that's why I'm saying to parents, your kids are not getting drawing during their school day, but it needs to be happening at home, because your kids are visual learners, and their drawing is a record of where they are. You can tell exactly where they are developmentally. And so trying to force them, kindergartners, to be writing sentences, is beyond them when they haven't had this. But also, I just put down some of the benefits of it. So if you just have crayons and kids can process and come back to themselves, if it's not happening in their day, which, generally it's not, then it needs to be happening at home. And part of the creative process is learning to do things without judgment. It's like, okay, that didn't work. And that's why I like working on long projects with kids. But who gets assigned the creative projects? Mom and dad. It does not get done at school. All of this right brain activity gets done at home. And when parents do the work for the kids, it's not happening, right? And it is just a vicious circle for so many kids. I wrote a grant. It was part of a $50,000 grant that our school got, but I was doing remedial work for kindergartners in art. So I had to have the parents bring the kids to school. The only time we could do it was like at 7 o'clock in the morning. All these little kids that were going to fail kindergarten, got them breakfast. I mean, if you think about it, that is crazy to be having to do that. So, but as I pointed out in the that test that I showed you, I'm not putting school as a negative. It's just how we have decided school is going to be. This really started with the accountability movement with George Bush and No Child Left Behind. And I wrote a thing for my administrators called No Subject Left Behind, that this was really important. And of course, as an art teacher, elementary art teacher, I have lost my job a few times in cuts because we haven't seen the value of what we're doing. So there's just lots of ways that your kids are being impacted, and this creative thinking, it's not an idle thing that we're talking about. It's the other side of your thinking. If we are just doing two halves of the brain, and it's just as important. And you can teach it. It needs to be exercised. It's not a random kind of fluff thing. So what we really need to see is that, and school does what schools are asked to do, but in this race for measurement and accountability, we tend to measure the subject. Well, we're measuring the subjects that can be measured, and it tends to be that girls are doing well at that. I don't want to make, a blanket statement. And Willa, who's a reading specialist, could certainly address this too. But it really has bothered me that we have said that, girls mature faster than boys, because what I would notice in teaching the younger kids is when you look at the blocks and all the stuff that boys are doing, and even recess and all of that, I just feel as the kids go through school that it's their spatial intelligence that's not being taught. And so they're not learning in the way that they learn best. That's why you really need to be reinforcing this at home for your boys. But in, starting in the mid 2000s, we shoved first grade into kindergarten. And so what happened was a lot of the kindergarten, all that stuff, the centers and all, were dismantled. And they're taught now, just like the older kids, with a teacher in front and giving information. Children at 5 are expected to be able to copy information from the board. That's a skill, but that skill comes so much later. We can't just push this on kids and think that they can do it, because it's developed just as much as we spend all that time teaching reading and, all sequentially stuff. This other has to be developed too. So that's why it was really interesting to me that art can be a favorite place for a lot of kids, because I am teaching them visually in the way that they learn best. And that's not all kids, but I just want to say that. And I really want us to value our, where our boys are. So I'm looking at the time. And as I say, this is a hot topic with me. But being paired with Irene, I really wanted parents to call your attention to the fact that we are putting these screens in the hands of babies now and in their strollers. And what your child needs to be doing is looking around. Your child has to be coming to the conclusions themselves, and making sense of it. And where is it going to show up first? It's going to show up in their scribbling and their coloring, what they're thinking about. They will have the visual language before they have the verbal. That will come. But that effort to express that, you cannot take that away. And I cannot tell you how important and valuable it is to continue the good work that Irene was sharing with you. And we need to carry this, how we carry this over into school. If it's not happening at school, then it needs to be happening at home, because I know the electronics are very seductive. I have grandkids. I know the battles. I know the battles parents have. What school has, and school has been pushed more and more to have it as part of the kids' experience. And we really need to look at that. I mean, I fought that for my millennial daughter, have that computer lab and all. And, we can rethink this, but it's only been for you younger parents, that's only been your experience. So if you can listen to this dinosaur, and I used to feel like, okay, it was really old fashioned what I was saying, but now I see it is cutting edge, it's leading edge of where we are, that this is really important to your children's success in school. And I could go on for another hour, but I will stop here because we want you to, we want to keep you to an hour.
I have to reinforce, Tracy, this is very relevant and it is crucial to developing a whole human being.
It is so much that we have to really see that, yes, we have things to do as school and we want our kids to be literate, but are the kids becoming literate with this other thing? So parents, I'm giving you permission to say that it is important that the kids put down the electronics. And if we cannot give electronics to kids till they're 2, let what Irene was talking about, let that the baby's brain develop the way it should be. And you'll have so much more success when you come and meet us for the first, formal school experience at pre-K and kindergarten. So we'll stop there. It is so hard to stop on this. As you can tell, it's been my soapbox topic for so long. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you on this matter. And Irene, thank you for being my partner on this, because it
Such
really
a
spurred me
privilege.
to say, okay, parents, you're going to hear from somebody who knows, and let me just reinforce it, what I see at school. And Doreen, Willa.
Hi,
Hey,
dear.
what
Hi,
would
dear.
you like to tell me?
I'm so sorry for being late. I had a very important coaching session with I'm with Elizabeth and Stephen now, Elizabeth Ocean.
Mhm.
Like I'm no longer, in the Sage group. And I had a 10:30 coaching appointment with him, and I was prepping before, whatever. But I wanted to get here. Can I have a replay of this?
Oh, the whole thing will be a replay, and I'll put all my slides in.
Okay.
The replay will be there of both of us.
Okay.
But
Because then I'd like to get together with the two of you. Now, I do have a question that if you can address it
Sure.
with the two of you. As a speech language pathologist, I was taught, and as a reading specialist, I've had lots of experience. The crawling movement, okay, when babies got into strollers, that devastating effect on the actual reading and speaking when you don't let that baby crawl. The development of the left and right hemisphere communication,
The coordination between them.
the coordination.
Yes.
So how about in terms of the creativity aspect of it, Tracy? Like, have you run into that, or Irene, have you run into the importance of crawling?
We were just talking about the facts that children develop, and in an experiential,
Of
holistic way.
course. Yeah.
So through the skin, through the eyes, through movement,
Yep.
through experiencing things, that's what's going to shape a human. And
Yeah.
that's what's going to shape the brain,
Yes.
particularly the first year of life, but often quite beyond that, you
Right.
know, but
Yeah.
it's critical in that first year.
Yeah.
And the early childhood experiences will literally shape the brain for
Yep.
the rest of their lives. I mean, that's actually the title of my talk. But
Yeah.
but so it's a whole experiential thing. And I'm so glad that Tracy brought up the art, because it is definitely through the senses and the experiences. And I would love to advocate for our children to learn in the way that is natural and whole to them.
Yeah, well, to me, it makes sense. Like if it's interfering with the development of both the
It is
speech
not just
and later the
one thing.
reading, yeah, it's the whole
It
thing,
is not just
right?
one thing. The crawling is actually something that really makes a mark. You know, that's why we don't want to put babies in walkers. But it's the whole developmental sequence,
Right.
not just one aspect of it, not
Oh, no,
just
no, I
art,
know
not
that. I
just
know that.
crawling,
Oh,
but
it's
it
everything. I
all
know.
makes a difference.
Yeah. Now, one thing that you too, I don't know whether you've heard of, it's called the divided brain. If you Google it, the divided brain, and then you can find, I caught it on a documentary, and I think you both would enjoy it. It's all about, you know, the development of like Tracy, when you're saying the way the school system has gone. I've watched this, you know, for the last 40 years. They're just
I know.
it's criminal to ask a kindergarten to be able to write things off the board. I mean, it's criminal, you know.
But what I want to
And
know is
the
who
divided
qualifies
brain
as
is just
people.
amazing. It's an amazing. He's written a book too, and it's all about the, you know, the lack of communication between the right and left hemispheres, and how we are like evolving that way, and it's pretty scary. I just
Probably because of the screens.
Yeah.
well, yes, yes,
I mean, that was, you know, I don't want to be the naysayer about the screens because they're everywhere, but we can't, you know, people want their children to be successful in school. And so I can tell what has come, you know, when you enter kindergarten, you can tell what's happened in the first 5 years as far as that part of it goes, you know, where their success is going to go. And, you know, then if you compound it with being a foster child or a child in a group home
Yeah.
or homeless and all of that, what just makes me so angry is that we label the kids as slow or deficient.
exactly.
When the fact of the matter is the things that needed to happen before they got to school didn't happen. So parents who are affluent do feel like, you know, this is an educational device in their hands. This is academic. No. Crawling, coloring, playing in the mud, being outside.
Climbing.
That is academics for
Yeah.
small children.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what we need you to hear our message, parents. Don't be afraid that your child's going to fall behind. Like I told you, the school where I taught up in Silicon Valley, they did not allow electronics in the school.
Yeah.
They said the kids will get that stuff.
Yeah,
They will get their
they will.
ABCs. They will get all of that. You do not have to teach that and push it on them. I know there's that feeling of parents who really care and want to make sure their kids have every advantage. The advantage is being a normal kid.
Exactly.
That's the advantage. If your kids are scribbling, they will come to school looking like geniuses. I hate to say it, but I'm just seeing it more and more. So please,
if you're
take our
building on
message.
those moments of development, natural development, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You will maximize the benefit of the neurodevelopment.
So I think the three of us, because Willa sees it as a reading specialist trying to correct what didn't happen.
The
Am I correct
labels,
in
the
that?
labels, the labels, the labels. The kids are labeled. Yeah.
So I think the three of us need to do a headline. We need to headline an education.
Yeah,
conference
absolutely. That's
I think we need to do some advocacy for sure.
on
Well,
this.
Serious advocacy.
Yeah.
I'm game.
Okay,
Let's make a plan.
we will.
All right, my friends.
All right. So
well,
I gotta go.
absolutely. I'm all for it, girls. I
Okay.
really am. Yeah. Now if I can get a replay of this, I will diligently go over it so that I know where you girls are at.
Yeah.
Were you both presenting basically on your niches, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So then I will send you a copy of my masterclass. Tracy, were you there? My masterclass for I was rounding up beta clients.
I was out of town.
Oh, you were out
I
of
missed
town.
it, so
Okay, well, I can send you mine, and if you
Okay.
girls want to take a peek at it, you know,
Okay,
then you'll know where I'm at, and then I'll know where you're at, and then let's get together and you know, talk about, because I'm
Yeah.
nurturing my Facebook group now, and you
good.
know,
Okay,
because I'd love to collaborate with both of you. I love the way you think.
yep, great. I'm going to stop this recording and then
Okay.
Irene and I will do a quick recap and then I'll, you know, we can have a Zoom meeting and talk.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Love you, and
Okay,
sorry
love
for
you
being
guys.
late. I wanted to
Okay.
get here. Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye. Oop, I'm going to pause. Okay, so Irene, let me. Hi, everyone. This is Tracy Cheney.
And Irene Martinez.
And we had a really great show today. We are talking to you parents about the importance of those first 5 years. For me, as an educator, telling you what to be doing before kindergarten.
And I spoke about the first year, which is crucial in building the rest of your lives and building on those miracle moments. And I call them miracle moments because they will shape the rest of your lives. But today's session was amazing because we were able to connect how we create a whole human being. I'll give you a hint, not with screens.
Yes. Now, this is permission, parents, to not have your small ones using screens. The statistics are, you know, almost 8 hours a day. I know it's a wonderful babysitter. I've got grandkids. I get it. But we also wanted to really call your attention what needs to be happening, which the normal stuff, ages 1 through 5 or 0 through 5, to get your kids ready for kindergarten. You'll love it. And we're not kidding. We see it on our side of what needs to be done. And you know what? It's joyous. It's fun. It's being a kid. And that's what prepares your kid for life.
Yes.
Okay. So parents, we are available to you. We love talking about this, and you'll find contact information in the comments below.
Here's the best beginnings.
Okay.